What really happens after the final breath? Does the self vanish into oblivion, or does it awaken into something far more vivid than life itself? Welcome, wanderer of the unseen, to the hidden theater of the soul. Today, we journey into one of the most mystifying and transformative spiritual texts ever conceived, the Bardo Thodol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But this isn't just a book. It's an initiation, a metaphysical manual for crossing the threshold between this life and what lies beyond it. The Bardo Thodol doesn't merely talk about death. It maps the invisible terrain of consciousness after physical dissolution. It's not a farewell letter to the world, but a lantern held up to the darkest and perhaps most illuminating corridor of the soul's voyage. At the heart of this ancient wisdom stands Padmasambhava, an enigmatic sage, both myth and man. A spiritual force who didn't just teach Buddhism to Tibet, he reshaped its inner cosmology. Often called Guru Rinpoche, the precious master, he was no ordinary monk. He was a tantric mystic, a spiritual alchemist who used mantras and meditation not to escape reality, but to decode it. It was through his insight that the Bardo Thodol came into being, a guide not only for the living, but especially for the dying. In his vision, death wasn't a defeat. It was the final gateway, perhaps the most sacred, through which liberation could still be seized. From an early age, Padmasambhava demonstrated siddhis, spiritual powers that defied logic. His life reads like a myth stitched into history. Born in India, invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, and tasked with a monumental mission, spiritually unify a land gripped by shamanic forces and the indigenous Bon tradition. But unification didn't mean erasure. Padmasambhava did not wage war against Bon deities. He conversed with them, danced with them in spirit, and alchemized their presence into a broader, richer form of Buddhism, what we now call Tibetan Buddhism. This spiritual inclusivity laid the foundation for Samye, Tibet's first monastery, and a sanctuary for teachings that penetrated the nature of mind, samsara, and the art of conscious dying. Within this framework, death is not an ending, but a space in between, a bardo. And Padmasambhava saw in this interval a sacred pause, a brief opening in which the soul could awaken beyond illusion. But he also knew that most untrained in awareness would miss that window, frightened, clinging, lost. So he crafted the Bardo Thodol, a script to be read aloud to the dying or studied in life, to orient the mind for what comes after the last heartbeat. This was an act of profound compassion, for even in the moment of departure, he believed a soul could still awaken. The Bardo Thodol outlines 3 primary bardos or transitions. The first is the Chikai Bardo, the passage at the moment of death. Here, the dissolution of the body gives rise to a staggering encounter, the clear light. Not a metaphor, but a direct, blinding manifestation of the pure mind, limitless, unconditioned awareness. Some may call it God, Source, or the higher self, but it defies naming. In this brief moment, the soul is offered liberation in its rawest form. If it recognizes the clear light as its true nature, all cycles end, nirvana is realized, and rebirth is unnecessary. But for most, the purity of the light is too much. It's not recognized as self, but as other. And so, out of fear or confusion, the soul withdraws, missing its moment. Thus begins the next phase, the Chonyid Bardo, the Bardo of visions. Psychologist Carl Jung once observed that what we call gods and demons are fragments of our own psyche. In the Chonyid Bardo, this insight is no longer philosophical. It's lived reality. In this stage, the soul, disembodied and ungrounded, enters a domain where mind paints the cosmos. Here, inner landscapes unfold into visionary experiences. Peaceful and wrathful deities arise, symbols of compassion, fear, love, and rage. These are not external spirits. They are projections of our own unresolved consciousness, now magnified in a psychic theater without walls. First come the peaceful deities, radiant, serene manifestations of spiritual grace. They may appear as Buddhas or divine archetypes, offering peace. But to the unprepared, even these blessings feel alien or overwhelming. Then follow the wrathful visions, intense, monstrous energies that reflect our shadow selves. They're terrifying not because they are evil, but because they are parts of us we never dared face. The Chonyid Bardo is a dream made lucid, a dream where everything feels hyper-real because the filters of physical life have been stripped away. It is here that souls must practice radical discernment, realizing that all of it, both terror and beauty, are mind-born illusions. The key to liberation in this realm lies in remembering one truth, that behind every mask, behind every vision, is the same light glimpsed at death, the clear light. It is the unchanging presence behind the storm. But to recognize this, one must train the mind while alive. Meditation, mindfulness, and confronting our own fears while embodied prepares us to remain lucid in the storm of the Chonyid Bardo. Without such preparation, the soul becomes entangled, either fleeing wrathful visions or clinging to peaceful ones, remaining stuck in the wheel of samsara. The third and final phase is the Sidpa Bardo, the Bardo of becoming, or rebirth. At this point, the soul is no longer weightless. It is now magnetized, drawn into the gravitational pull of karma. The seeds we planted in thought, word, and action begin to sprout, compelling the soul toward a new life. Here, the soul sees symbolic visions, often of couples in union, portals of potential rebirth. But this isn't romantic. It is archetypal. These visions mirror the pull of unresolved desires, fears, and identities. The next incarnation is not selected with logic. It's attracted instinctively, pulled by the emotional patterns the soul still carries. Fear might draw it into a difficult life, unresolved anger into a chaotic one, but even this isn't punishment. It is opportunity. Each rebirth is a mirror, reflecting what the soul needs to face in order to wake up. Yet, even now, there is a chance. If the soul can maintain lucidity, if it can see these visions as illusions, it can resist the pull of rebirth and dissolve back into the clear light. This is why Tibetan masters urge preparation during life. Through contemplation, meditation, and confronting our inner world, we shape the path beyond death. Because ultimately, the Bardo Thodol isn't a book about dying. It's a book about living consciously. It's a reminder that who we are at the moment of death is not created in that instant. It is the sum of how we have lived, loved, feared, and awakened. To master the Bardos is not just to navigate death, it is to become lucid in the dream of life itself. As the great teacher Ram Dass once said, "When you die, there is only one question that matters. How well did you love? How deeply did you let go?" And perhaps that is the final key. Not escape, not resistance, but surrender into the light we've always been.